In 2020, the world paused. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally paused. The world stopped and watched Officer Derek Chauvin kneel on the neck of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. And for once, America could not look away. We screamed, "Black Lives Matter." And for a moment, just for a moment, it felt like the world screamed it back at us. Black Lives Matter. Corporations said it. Politicians said it. Sports leagues said it. Even people who had never said the word black without discomfort said it. But then the backlash came. Because to some people, black progress had gone way too far. Justice started to feel like a threat. Accountability started to feel to them like oppression. And that moment, the moment when America might have actually changed, it collapsed from the weight of fear. That was 2020. Now, 6 years later, it's 2026. And something darker, more sinister is happening. Because today, it isn't just local violence from police. It isn't just Minneapolis Police Department, as it was for George Floyd. It's the federal government. ICE, Immigration and Custom Enforcement, is killing Americans today. And this time, they're white. And all of a suddenly, people understand what unchecked state power feels and looks like. America didn't begin as a peaceful nation. It didn't begin peacefully. It began with a massacre. The Boston Massacre, to be exact. And prior to that, the killing of an unarmed child. British soldiers killing colonists in the street became the momentary spark of the American Revolution. Government violence against civilians. Unaccountable force. The people realized that state was no longer protecting them. That's how America began. So here's the question we ask everyone 250 years later. Is what's happening now, the massacre of American civilians on the street, what's happening now, is this how America ends? Or is this a rebirth? Because history doesn't just repeat, it circles back. And every empire eventually has to answer for who it protects, what it protects, and who it doesn't, and what it doesn't. We've approached a pivotal moment in United States history. And I tend to say it is cosmic, spiritual, ancestral control behind this. We are at year 250. 2 plus 5 is 7. 7, biblically Numerologically, and in any traditions you can think of across the world, 7 denotes completion. Completion of what? And is it a death or a rebirth? Let's move on to Black News Now. Even though the subject of this next story isn't a black man, what happened to him is reflexive of something that happens to black people all over the country, all the time. And it doesn't get reported. It doesn't get checked. It doesn't get the justice that it deserves. But let's get into our first story. Alex Pretti was a 37-year-old ICU nurse, a U.S. citizen, a man who spent his life keeping others alive, a man who lost his life in an attempt to save another. And last week, he was killed by federal agents during an ICE operation in Minneapolis. This is the second one there. And allegedly there are others. According to witnesses and video footage that we all saw, Pretti was filming the agents in a public space, his right. He was pepper sprayed, then tackled, pinned to the ground by multiple officers, and then shot and killed. This didn't happen at the U.S. border. It didn't happen during a violent raid. It happened in the same city where George Floyd was murdered. It happened in the same city where Nicole Renee Good a few weeks ago, was murdered. Let that sink in a bit. Minneapolis again. And in many ways, when I talk about this in my own personal reflection, mentally, I see Minneapolis as the new Boston, if you get my drift. Federal agents did it this time. Same outcome. And here's the part that America is struggling with. This wasn't about his immigration status. He was a citizen. This wasn't about how they used for George Floyd his criminal record. From all accounts, he was a fine, upstanding citizen. This was about power. When the state decides who can live and who can die without any consequences, there's a problem. And here's the I guess you would say, here's the gag. Black Americans have been warning you about this kind of unchecked state power for centuries. State power without accountability only expands, only grows when it's left unchecked. Countless examples throughout history that you can draw back on. Many examples within the United States as of how black people have been affected. So what you are watching in real time is not new. It's just new to you, white America. So what are you going to do? In a more positive story, this one is relating to a black man. Positive, but unfortunate at the same time. But the bittersweetness is typical of the Black American experience here. Let's talk about memory. In Texas, a Black man who was executed nearly 70 years ago, 70 years ago, has finally been exonerated. He was 19 years old when this happened, when the state killed him. He was convicted at that time by an all-white jury, almost guaranteeing a conviction, and there are many, many, many stories of that same situation. It was based on coerced testimony. He was beaten. And in a case dripping with racial panic, the terrible, evil, menacing Black man. Something that we've seen so many times. If it wasn't extra legal people taking the law into their own hands in the form of lynching, the state did it legally. And many times, Black people were wrongly convicted and lost their lives. And just as a matter of understanding, even still to this day, 60 to 65% of exonerations are Black people. Because Black people are disproportionately falsely convicted. But now, 7 decades later in this particular case, the state exonerates him. The state admits that they got it wrong. The state admits that it made a mistake on its case. Isn't that something? And we're going to say his name because in instances like this, we don't need to shy away from saying the names of these victims of state crime. We don't need to shy away from putting their truth out there. These victims of state crimes. Sorry, y'all. Hold on. My stuff is just a mess. It's a mess. That man's name is Tommy Lee Walker. Tommy Lee Walker has been exonerated by Texas. They got it wrong. But here's the problem. You can't give someone their life back after the electrocution chair. There's so many generations of people who he could have contributed to creating, who could have had better opportunities that he had, who don't exist because Texas got it wrong. This isn't justice. This is an admission. An admission that the system has always, and I do mean always, been willing to kill Black people first and ask questions later. So when people say, why are Black people so distrustful of the justice system? Mr. Walker is why. Because for us, History isn't about the abstract. It's buried, it's burned, it's executed. And only acknowledgement when it is, or only acknowledged, should I say, when it is politically safe, or as some type of symbolic gesture of moving forward. One thing I can say from my own personal perception is that we have a lot of symbolic gestures happen here to try to right the wrong of what America has done to black people. And I, quite frankly, am sick of symbolic gestures. It's time for some real actions, some permanent actions, or else we're just wasting time 250 years into the future. And now it's time for Black World Now. This segment we talk about stories that cover black people, but all over the world outside the United States. Because as I have made it clear on this channel, this is a channel for black people. And I believe, and I stand on it firmly, that we are an interconnected people despite our cultural, national, geographical differences. Because being black in the world comes with such baggage that we all have to carry. No one's baggage is more than anyone else, because the world does not designate whose blackness is more important. The world says you're black, and therefore your life doesn't matter. And so in the Black World News, Black World Now segment, we discuss black people on other parts of the world. One of the interesting stories is the Nigerian airstrikes that happened a couple of weeks ago. The United States was giving a different story than the Nigerian government has been given as it relates to these airstrikes. Let's zoom in out globally and talk about this. The United States and Nigeria are now telling different stories about the recent airstrikes that just occurred against militants. Washington, the United States government, says that the strikes were targeted against extremist groups. More specifically, extremist groups that have said to be targeting Christians and killing Christians. And in fact, I have a little intel on this where I have a Nigerian former employee who lives in Nigeria. And he himself has said that there were killings of Christians not that far from where he lived. But he has also said it's nowhere near to the level of needing an airstrike. Nigeria, their government says the details don't fully align with what's happening on the ground in Nigeria. And I think this important distinction does matter. Because Africa has lived for centuries with foreign intervention of various kinds. China, Russia, the Middle East, India, the Arabic world, Europe, right? Long enough to recognize the patterns that they're seeing beforehand. And Nigeria was a colonized country of the British. So they know what this looks like. External powers define the threat. They control the narrative. And they leave local government left to deal with the consequences of the actions. Across the continent, people are asking a bunch of questions as it relates to this latest airstrike from the United States. Who decides what security looks like in Africa? Who controls the truth? Whose narrative is the narrative that we believe? And we know, living in the United States right now, under the current administration, we are challenged with accepting much of what they call truth, locally, let alone globally. And the last question is, who pays the ultimate price for these decisions. The United States didn't seem to stay in Nigeria for damage control after these airstrikes. It seems like the Nigerian government was left alone to that task. This isn't just about Nigeria. It's about sovereignty, y'all. American sovereignty, American imperialism, American dominance. It's about memory. We've been here before. Nigeria has been here before. But it's also about who gets to write history in real time. And that is the most damaging, because if Nigeria, and if we aren't animate about putting out truth here in the United States, so much can occur and so much damage can be done in the long term. Okay, so I wanted to kind of do a special conversation segment, entertainment segment now, because this is very, very, very powerful and important to me. So now, let's talk about something lighter, but no less, like I said, important. The movie Sinners, Ryan Coogler's Sinners, has received 16 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 Academy Award nominations, making it the most nominated movie in United States history. Let me repeat that. 16 nominations makes Sinners the most nominated movie in United States history. And it could not be a more powerful film. What I loved about Sinners in the 3 times that I've seen it, and I'll probably watch it again, is that it is such a glimpse into the 1930s Mississippi Delta region, and he masterfully connects all of the pieces, tells a beautiful story, and then there's deeper layers beyond the story. I've said this multiple times on social media, and I'll say it again here. Sinners, in my opinion, has created a new category, and I believe the Oscars need, even if there are other movies from Black artists, there needs to be a specific category for Black excellence in film at the Oscars, because Sinners falls into none of those categories. It falls into none of the genres that were created, because as Black people have historically done, we create our own lane and everybody else complies. But Sinners has received 16 nominations. And I want to put this also on the record. It's taken all 16. Sinners will win every single award that it has been nominated for. Because in my gut feeling, I feel something in the atmosphere is shifting. The stories that are winning now, they're darker. They're more honest, they're gritty, they're real. They're less interested in comfort and more interested in truth. And this is going to be a year of truthful expulsion. But it's also going to be a year of cosmic shift. What was white is now black. What was good is no longer good or perceived good. And what was perceived bad is perceived what's right. Because there is a cosmic adjustment of the arena that we call life, the environment, the globe, the society. This doesn't just happen by accident. Culture always moves politics. And right now, culture is telling us that people are ready, ripe to confront who America really is and has always been. Not the myth, not the myth, not the branding. No matter how much they try to remove historical artifacts pertaining to black history and blackness in America, they're not going to be able to succeed, because you're going to make it even more stronger, and you're going to make people's thirst and hunger for it even more stronger. This is going to be reality. So here we are. Federal agents killing citizens, American citizens. The dead being exonerated decades too late. Global power being questioned. And truth finally becoming fashionable in the United States. America began with a massacre. The Boston Massacre. Brother Crispus Attucks laid his life for the foundation and formation of this country, along with others. The question isn't whether the moment is dangerous, because it certainly is. But the question is whether this is the end of America, or is it a rebirth? I don't believe it's the end. I believe it is not necessarily a rebirth, but the birth of the America that it has always should be. The birth of an America that tells the truth. The birth of an America where democracy reigns and racism, bigotry, and any other kind of hatred of people simply for being who they are has no place. A progressive America. A black-led America, a woman-led America, an immigrant-led America, a brown-led America, an America that feels like the land of the free and not the land of the few. Because history doesn't ask politely. It demands an answer. And this has been my Black Truth. I want to thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for watching the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And share. Tell your friends about Black Truth Daily, where we come here and we tell the truth and we talk about various subjects and things that impact the black community. There's entertainment, there's culture, there's fun, there's news, hard-hitting stories, but ultimately there is truth. And this truth deserves to be heard. Follow me on social media. Follow the Woke 250. And I'll do something more to talk more about what Woke 250 is, because I think it's an awakening period. And black minds are waking up. See you next time.